Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. Welcome to our show Weekly Roundup. This is your host Muhammad Ali with a new episode. As you know, in our program we discuss different news which have made headlines during the week and the news inside our country as well as globally, and we analyze these news in the light of Friday sermon of Ayatollah Sayyid Jawad Naqvi Hafazahullah. So viewers, starting from the first news is that on 5th of August, the Shias from around the whole country, they commemorated this day as the day of martyrdom for the great leader Sayyid Arif Hussain al-Hussaini. He was such a charismatic personality. This great leader, he was actually martyred in Peshawar in one of his seminaries on 5th of August, after serving as the leader of Shia nation of Pakistan for 4 years. So, viewers, actually, as you know, that he was appointed as the rahbar of Tariq-e Nifaz-e-Fiqh Jafriya after the death of Mufti Jafar Hussain. Sayyid actually got his initial education from Najaf, then he went to Qom, from where he came to Pakistan, and he established a new seminary over there in Parachinar, and he started preaching. And Mufti Jafar Hussain, as you know, is also quite an important personality in the history of Shias in Pakistan. He has got different great works he has done for the Shia nation in Pakistan. As notably, the most important thing what he did was actually during his first part of his rahbari of Tariq-e Nifaz-e-Fiqh Jafriya, he organized a convention which is named as Islamabad Convention at the time of Ziaul Haq. As you know that Ziaul Haq is a terrible dictator, and he didn't allow any political and religious party to conduct any processions or any gatherings or anything, and he was crushing everyone. But that was the success of Shia nation under the leadership of Mufti Jafar Hussain, that they actually, whatever their demands were, Ziaul Haq had to accept all the demands, and that was we can call it the peak time of Shia Muslims in Pakistan. Unfortunately, there is no written history about the journey of Shia Muslims in Pakistan, and our Shia leaders, they have been busy in actually making history and causing controversies rather than writing the history. And this is similar in fiqh too. There is no authentic history of fiqh, but regarding philosophy, as we know, Abu Ali Sina, he wrote the philosophy. When he started to work on philosophy, he wrote the history of philosophy, starting from the very beginning, that from where the philosophy originated and all the steps which it followed. So work needs to be done on it, because it has caused a lot of confusions among the youth, and youth are not aware that what has happened in history, and it doesn't give them a clear path regarding even the that path of Shaheed Arif Hussain al-Hussaini. There is a lot of confusion regarding that. So Shaheed Arif Hussain al-Hussaini, when he took over the rahbari of this organization, which was the organization representing the Shia Muslims of Pakistan, the condition wasn't really good. Although Mufti Jafar Hussain was a great scholar, but he wasn't too close to Inqilab. And as you know, because he had acquired his education from Najaf and from Lucknow, and the ulama from there are not as close to Inqilab. And although he loved Inqilab, but he wasn't a revolutionary leader himself. And the majority of Shia ulama at the time of Shaheed Arif Hussain al-Hussaini, they were actually not really close to Inqilab, and they were muqallid of Ayatollah Shariat Madari. As you know, we mentioned in one of our previous programs that Ayatollah Shariat Madari was a a so-called Ayatollah who was close to Shah, and he was anti-Imam Khomeini. So it is one of the miracles, we can call it, of this Shaheed Sayyid, that he was able to guide the youth of Pakistan, or Shias of Pakistan, on the way of Vilayat with the help of his cabinet, among which most of the people were either Muqallid of Ayatollah Shariat Madari or were not really Inqalabi. So that's a great thing what he did. So when we look in the history, the way he was appointed, when Mufti Jafar Hussain, after facing all these difficulties in his second part of his tenure, Mufti Jafar Hussain, when he died, he actually, his life is not that great too, especially the second part of his life. Because the government of Ziaul Haq realized that how strong Shias are, and if they are united, they can be dangerous to the government. So they isolated him, and he actually, Mufti Jafar Hussain died in isolation. And he didn't have much support or financial help from the Shia nation. And after his death, the Muslim or the Shia leaders, they joined their heads together and started to think that who should replace him. There was a gathering of ulama in Rawalpindi, where the ulama gathered and discussed who should be his successor. And one of our senior Shia leaders, Sayyid Sajid Ali Naqvi, he actually suggested to make Hamid Ali Shah Muswi, Sayyid Hamid Ali Shah Muswi, in this gathering, the successor of Mufti Jafar Hussain. And it was discussed in that procession that this suggestion would be sent to the Supreme Council, and the final decision will be taken by the Supreme Council. But unfortunately, the news went to media, and it was announced that Hamid Ali Shah Muswi is the successor of Mufti Jafar Hussain. But when Supreme Council came to know about it, they did a gathering in Bakhar, an area of Punjab, and they actually chose Sayyid Arif Hussain al-Hussaini as the successor of Mufti Jafar Hussain. And from that point, this nation divided into two parts. One group was actually supporting Hamid Ali Shah Muswi, and the other group was the supporter of Shaheed Arif Hussain al-Hussaini. Shaheed Arif Hussain al-Hussaini spent most of his time, he had 4 years tenure. Most of his time he was trying to just get the nation united, and he was trying to meet Hamid Ali Shah Muswi, but unfortunately this didn't happen. And now we were talking about the ideology of our Shaheed, great Shaheed. His ideology was no different to ideology of Imam Khomeini. He was the actually revolutionary leader who introduced Inqilab, as well as Imam Khomeini, as well as the great personalities like Shahid Mutahari to Shia youth. And it is only due to him that the direction of Shia Muslims was changed, and most of the youth became Inqalabi from that time onwards. So this organization, Tehreek-e Nefaz-e Fiqh Jafriya, which is its old name, it was later on, after Shahid passed away, the name was changed to Tehreek-e Jafriya Pakistan, and later on, at the time of Musharraf, it was banned because he was trying to balance the banning of different terrorist organizations at his time, and this organization has been going with by changing different names. But since then, there has been a lot of division, and many things have happened during these 33 years. So when we talk about that, what was the role of Shaheed in the history of Shia Muslims, his role was really great. He actually, if we discuss about his path. I mean, because there is a lot of confusion in youth regarding his path. Actually, he had. We can sum it up with 3 points, that he was actually following that Islami Nab or Tashayyu'e Nab, and the second thing what he was always trying to do was to unite all the Muslims, and he never allowed any sort of misguided people like Nusayris or someone to come close to him, and he was always against it. Unfortunately, now we see that these Nusayris and some professionals, they come on minbar and say a lot of shirkiya things on minbar, but at the time of Shaheed, it wasn't possible due to his great leadership. And the third thing which is quite significant in the figure of Shaheed is that he was a real inqalabi or real revolutionist. And like Shaheed Sadr has said, that whoever wants to be successful needs to actually completely adopt the ideology of Imam Khomeini. And if we talk about any personality who has done it in Pakistan, is Shaheed Arif Hussain al-Hussaini. And his sacrifices for Shia nation are uncountable. But similarly to Mufti Jafar Hussain, he wasn't treated very well. He who was like the people who appointed him initially as the leader of Shia Muslims started to oppose him, because when the government realized that this great leader is uniting all the Muslims against the dictator regime of Ziaul Haq, and he wanted to bring the real Islam in Pakistan, and as they knew that he was such an effective leader, and he was loved from Shias as well as Sunnis throughout our country. So the government tried to create hurdles in his path. So those ulama who had initially appointed him started to talk about him, that he's not capable of leading the Shia nation and things like that, so and so. And I mean, things reached to that such point that in one of the gatherings in Lahore, in Model Town, Shaheed presented a formal resignation in one of the gatherings. And he said that, I'm really sorry to come to know that the Shia ulama are not happy from my performance, and if they think that I cannot lead Shia nation really well, then here we go, my resignation is here. But senior ulama like Sayyid Ghulam Ali and many others started to really request him that please Sayyid, don't do it, and continue to lead the Shia nation. And it is narrated regarding Sayyid Ghulam Ali that he kept his amama in the feet of Sayyid Arif Hussain al-Hussaini to take the resignation back, and so he did that. So after passing 4 years in the Rahbari, he died, and on his death, the statement which came from Imam Khomeini is really quite significant. Imam Khomeini asked and told the Shia nation of Pakistan that to follow the path of this great Shaheed, and as we said, that the path of this Shaheed was exactly the path of Imam Khomeini and the path of Inqilab. So hopefully the Shia nation is going to remember this great Shaheed and follow the path of this great person as well. And we were talking about the second issue. Second issue is also on 5th of August. As you know, on 5th of August, the Indian government, the current Indian government, Modi government, they scrapped that special rule which was present in that article which was present in the Constitution of India regarding Kashmir, that Kashmir had a special status, but they got rid of it on that day, and the Kashmiris around the world, they are actually doing different sort of processions and protests throughout the world regarding that day and that step from the Indian government. And the whole world, I mean, didn't do anything, and they just watched India doing this crime. And even the Arab countries and some Western countries, they helped and gave full support to India for doing this. And we saw some of the Arab countries like Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and UAE. They gave special medals to Prime Minister Modi of India for doing this criminal act with the people of Kashmir. And now what we see our government and our politicians, they are doing, I mean, in past we have seen that the politicians throughout the world, all the religious leaders and the media, they have kept quiet. But now some of the voices are coming from within the government, that people are saying that we will go to Security Council and ask the United Nations to do something for Kashmiris. Well, United Nations has done something for Kashmiris, as you know, that what they have done, that they have made the culprit of this whole thing, India, the president of Security Council. And now Pakistani government plans to take this issue to Security Council again and remind them regarding their resolutions. But as you know, that nothing is going to happen because the international community is supporting India completely. And the only thing which would give independence to the people of Kashmir is to follow the path of Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam. As you know, that Imam Khomeini, who followed this path, was able to get rid of the monarchy which was present for thousands of years in Iran. No one could even believe that, but because he was a true follower of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, so he was able to get rid of it and get independence for the people of Iran. Similarly, if people of Kashmir, they stop relying on other countries and other nations to get them independence, I mean, the sacrifices they have given, they should be enough for getting independence from India. And as we know, that there will be an end to this terrible sort of attitude from India with people of Kashmir, because as we know, the Britishers, they had to leave Muslims of subcontinent at the end after their struggle. Similarly, India will have to leave Kashmiris, and hopefully we pray for them that they will get the independence soon, inshallah. So, third issue, what we are going to discuss, viewers, is regarding Saudi Arabia. As you know, that in previous episodes we have also discussed regarding Mohammed bin Salman's ambitions to make Saudi Arabia a liberal state, and he has taken several steps for that. And we talked about different religious leaders and different countries of the world, that no one is pointing out the finger on whatever steps Mohammed bin Salman has taken. And as we know, that he's trying to transform Saudi Arabia to a liberal state. And he wants to get rid of the conservative Islamic identity of Saudi Arabia. And at least now we can say that last week, one of the great scholars, who is also known as the Mufti Azam Pakistan, he's called Mufti Azam Pakistan by the Deobandi school of thought. He's got a huge seminary in Karachi. There are two brothers, Mufti Rafi Usmani and Mufti Taqi Usmani. Mufti Taqi Usmani gave the statement on Twitter that whatever Saudi Arabia and the government of Saudi Arabia is doing is actually not in the line of Islam, and the recent steps they have taken should be condemned. He said actually regarding the steps they've recently taken, like actually not allowing the Muslims from around the world to attend the Hajj procession. He objected that when Saudi Arabia can continue the trade, business, and allow different musical concerts and different gatherings, and people are coming from West and other countries to Saudi Arabia without any issues, then why couldn't they quarantine people, and with all the precautions and vaccinations, they could allow Muslims from around the world to attend Hajj. Actually, this sort of Hajj, as we talked in the previous program, that it has been praised by the European Union, and hopefully it's not going to come a routine. And the second thing he actually talked about is that there are different steps which Saudi government has taken which are condemnable, and one of them, he said that the Saudi has cancelled all the fatwas based on Khabar-e-Wahid, and actually it's really a great thing to see our religious scholars talking about the wrong things happening in the other countries of Muslim world. But as we see, last year his brother Mufti Rafi Usmani gave a fantastic statement regarding Shia Muslims, that Shia Muslims are our brothers and we don't have any issues with them, but because of the pressure which came from the sectarian groups, within 3 days he took his statement back, and he had to tell the people that he is still his mind hasn't changed about Shias, and their thoughts or their beliefs are similar regarding Shias. So hopefully it's not going to happen this time, and this great scholar is going to just remain mustaqim on his statement. So as we know, in this statement, Twitter, I was reading that he said that we used to think that Saudi is great because they do a lot of great arrangements at the time of Hajj, but now because they have taken these several steps, so they should be condemned. I mean, the arrangements or the management they were doing at the time of Hajj, some of them are appreciable, but there are many terrible steps they have taken during the management in previous years. Like, take the example, they have got good arrangement of water and the accommodation, and although the millions of people come from around the world, but the processions go really well organized. But as we see in the recent years, many people have been killed during a lot of accidents or shootings during this procession, and the organizers, they are really rude and they treat pilgrims really badly. And the worst thing what we can say is that actually the management of Saudi Arabia or the government of Saudi Arabia are not allowing the other countries to participate in managing this Hajj procession, which is the right of the other countries, to other Muslim countries, because Hajj is same for everyone. Hajj is for all Muslims, not only confined to the government of Saudi Arabia. So this statement by Mufti Rafi Usmani is great, and hopefully the other parts of our country, like journalists and religious scholars and politicians, will also talk regarding Saudi Arabia. Although most of them, they are quite confused between Haramain Sharifain and like what is actually Haramain Sharifain. Some of them who are quiet, they have got reason to be quiet because they think that Saudi Riyal or Aramco or Jeddah or Riyadh, it is actually Haramain Sharifain. I mean, they should realize that it's the matter of the integrity of Muslims around the world, and the basic thing of Hajj. It should be better next year, and Muslims from around the world should talk about it. So viewers, here we'll be taking a short break, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, viewers. We were talking about different national and international issues in the light of Friday sermon of Ayatollah Sayyid Jawad Naqvi Hafazahullah. So, next news which we are going to talk about is the statement from the Saudi general who is actually running the campaign against the Yemeni Muslims, and his name is Turki al-Maliki. He gave some figures, viewers, regarding what has happened so far in Saudi Arabia from Houthis. That he said that Houthis from Yemen, they have attacked 128,000 times on Saudi Arabia or Saudi assets, and he gave some other figures that there were 383 missile attacks and some 960 drone attacks from this small group of Houthis in Yemen. I mean, he was trying to prove to the media that the attacks are coming from Houthis from inside Yemen, and Saudi is only defending, but they are actually all the retaliatory attacks or the response from the Houthis, and it will only increase iman of people on these great militia group in Yemen. That, I mean, although they have been encircled by the Western powers and Saudi Arabia, and which are not letting any medicine or any sort of weaponry or anything go inside Yemen, but still they are fighting great like this, and they are giving tough time to Saudi Arabia. Actually, the economy of Saudi is suffering, as you know, that it's because of the war on Yemen and some other issues. It is going down terribly, and Mohammed bin Salman has taken several steps which are actually destroying its own regime too. So, as we know that religiously, their fight is with the Shias of the whole world, and politically they are fighting with Iran, but their economy fight is among all those countries. Like Saudi Arabia it's competing with UAE, and UAE is competing with Bahrain and Qatar, and they are all like trying to beat each other and make their own economy great. So this has been an issue in the Middle East. Now discussing the second important event which has occurred during this week is the game of Olympics. As you know, that Olympics is an international sports event which takes place in one. I mean, the country is selected every year in which country these games will be organized. And as you know, that most of the medals nowadays, they are being taken by the players of China, and the second or third country which comes is either USA or Britain or some other countries like Japan and stuff. They are doing good. Pakistan used to be really good. Pakistan used to be Olympic champion in different games, especially in hockey. As you know, that hockey is our national game. Cricket is not. Cricket is the national game of Britain. But because of the terrorism and the wrong governance by our government, the previous governments as well as this government, many sectors have destroyed, but also the sports sector has also destroyed. And unfortunately, we are not able to take even a single medal for many previous Olympic Games. And similarly, in this Olympics too, it's unfortunate that we haven't won any medal so far. Although there were a lot of hopes from this Prime Minister, that because he is the only Prime Minister of any country in the world that who is a sportsman himself, and as he says that he has done 3 PhDs in sports, so he should have at least worked on sports in such a way that Pakistan would have done better in sports, but unfortunately it's not the case. So, like economy and other fields, sports is also going down. So actually, sports is quite crucial because it represents any nation, and it gives morale boosting to any country. But as we know that nothing much has been done by the government, and to the grassroots level, sports are disappearing, and our youth, they are more busy in using their mobile phones and social media rather than like coming to the playgrounds and playing such games which will give them exercise, as well as they can make great name for their country in the world. So our youth, they should come to the playing grounds, they should play soccer, they should play some other games which are actually good, a good exercise, as well as they can do good on the national and international level too. So the other issue that we are going to discuss is regarding the Iranian government. Iranian government, as you know, that Rouhani's reformist government tenure has finished, and on 5th of August, again 5th of August, an important date, the new government of revolutionary government of Iran of Sayyid Ibrahim Raisi, they have taken oath, and on that the old president or the previous president of Iran, President Rouhani, as we discussed in the previous program, he met with Rahbar Muazzam, in which Rahbar Muazzam condemned their policies and said that they had failed and they had actually disappointed the Iranian nation, and whatever promises they had done, they were not able to fulfill because Rahbar Muazzam said that they didn't follow the instructions of Rahbar Muazzam not to trust on West, but they did, and they haven't gained anything, only they have lost. President Rouhani, in one of the gatherings, he gave a speech in which he also accepted that he has disappointed Iranian nation, and his government has failed, and they haven't been able to achieve anything for the people of Iran. But one of the things which he said is quite controversial. He said that he can't tell the Iranian nation the complete truth about the reason of the failure. I mean, he's trying to point out what Jawad Zarif, his foreign minister, had said already during one of the interviews, that the reason for the failure of their government was that they blamed different generals and Sipahi Quds, like General Qasim Soleimani, that they didn't allow them to succeed on the and get anything really fruitful for the people of Iran. Actually, the reason why President Rouhani has failed is that he was thinking that he is one of the, great. He's one of the great bureaucrats, and he can actually, he's really good at negotiating, and he will be able to achieve really some sort of like miracle for the people of Iran. And he's actually, his specialty is in diplomacy, and he's known to be a good diplomat. He was involved in negotiation when Iran did negotiations with Iraq or with the big powers. Whenever they were negotiating, President Rouhani was a part of it. But because of his arrogance and denying the path given by Rahbar Muazzam, he actually failed because of this, and this has caused him to be a failed president. So hopefully this government is going to listen to Rahbar Muazzam, and as we know that this government is a revolutionary government. The new president Sayyid Ibrahim Raisi, he gave a speech and pointed out that he will be working on three things during his tenure. As he had promised during his election campaign, he said that he will be getting rid of the problems for the people of Iran. And there are several problems, there is unemployment, there is problem of health issues because of COVID-19, and as we talked about the issue of load shedding and water shortage issues in Iran recently, which have sparked anger in the public. So there are some real issues what he has to face, and he has promised that he will be able to get rid of all these issues. And the second thing what he said during his speech, that he will be making a revolutionary government, because he had promised during his election campaign, as we know that after President Rafsanjani, it will be the first revolutionary government which will come into power. As we know that President Khatami and Rouhani, they are reformists, and they tried to distance themselves from the revolutionary style of government, because they thought that if they will do that, they will be able to attract the attention of US and the European countries, but they failed to do so. And Ahmadinejad, although he did some revolutionary things during his tenure, but the end of his government wasn't really good, and because of the things which he did at the end, has resulted him being banned from the politics, like the other politicians, like President Khatami and President Rafsanjani, who has passed away, was also the same too. So hopefully this government is going to stick to whatever they have said, and they will be successful in achieving all these great things for the people of Iran. So, and because as you know that Iran is the center of Tashayyu of the Muslims of the whole world, and if there is any sort of terrible thing happening, like law and order situation is worsening, or instability in Iran, will definitely affect the Shia Muslims all around the world. So the other issue what we are going to discuss, viewers, is a great gathering in Jamia Urwatul Wusta. It was actually a conference, what we call it, National Consultation Conference of Bedari Ummat, or Reawakening of Ummah, Muslim Ummah. In this, it is the first time in the history of Pakistan that the leadership of all the various Islamic groups or the sects, they gathered at one place, and they discussed that what should be the solution of the problems of the Pakistani nation, and how the unity could be brought among the Muslims of the nation. So this gathering is really great, and I mean it would be really fruitful, because the timing is really important. It has been organized just before the start of Muharram, and as we know that, like last time, what had happened, that these sectarian-minded people, they had raised some issues before the start of Muharram, and which caused a lot of restlessness among the Muslims and different sects, and there was a danger of escalation of the sectarianism in Pakistan. But due to the great efforts of our great leader Ayatollah Sayyid Jawad Naqvi, Hafazahullah, he organized a conference just before the start of Muharram last year, and which helped to actually extinguish the fire of sectarianism. And this time too, hopefully, this conference will be fruitful for the unity of the Muslims of the whole Pakistani nation, as well as the effects of it will go throughout the world. You know, even the photos of different Muslim leaders sitting together, they are really fruitful. They get rid of many of the confusions which are present among the ordinary people, because not everyone has got a sound knowledge of like the differences which are present between the sects, but they are misguided from the professionals who come on members, just charge fees and tell them the people the wrong type of things, and that's why they get misguided. But these sort of gatherings, they are quite significant. And it's also an important thing that this Jamia Urwatul Wusta is respected among the other sects of Muslims, because it has kept itself away from any political matters, and it has kept, there is no sort of financial benefit or like other sort of interests the organizers of Jamia have got what they are achieving from these conferences. That's why because it's done purely to bring unity among the Muslims of Pakistan. That's why the people and the scholars from around Pakistan, they are coming to Jamia Urwatul Wusta, and hopefully it's going to continue in future too. And Jamia will continue to play its role in the unity of Muslims. And viewers, the last topic what we are going to discuss is the month of Muharram, which is approaching. We have spoken regarding this in the previous programs too, that it's quite unfortunate that before the Muharram starts, although it's the month of respect, government starts to take several negative steps, and the sectarian-minded people, they start to give fuel to the fire of sectarianism, and eventually it causes a lot of law and order, terrible law and order situation, and many things which shouldn't be done during the month of Muharram. So this time around too, we see different steps from the government that they have started to put the organizers of different majalis in forced schedule, and some of the government authorities, they are calling these organizers to the government offices, and they are actually harassing him and giving them some sort of timelines that you have to stick to the time, and if some of the persons who come and speak about this topic during their speeches, then you will be in trouble and things like that. This is complete double standards. As during the time of Taraweeh or some other gatherings at the time of like 12th Rabiul Awwal or something, does the government do the same thing? No, it's not true. It's only being done to the Shia Muslims, which is quite wrong. So Shia Muslims also, they are quite capable of protecting themselves, although this is the responsibility of the state to provide protection to the religious processions of any group, even they are Muslims or non-Muslims, because they are citizens of Pakistan. But if government is not interested in doing it, and as you know that government in past haven't done it for the Shia Muslims, then Shia Muslims are quite capable of defending themselves, as they have done. They were able to defend harams of Syria and different shrines, the holy shrines in Karbala and Najaf, and then why can't they tackle the Takfiris over here? They have been able to fight the ISIS fighters over there, so they know how to protect themselves. But government should try not to do these sort of negative things to any of their citizens, and try to play a positive role. And in that way, we can see that the people, they will be also able to help the government to maintain a better law and order situation in Pakistan. And this is also a responsibility of the organizers of different majalis and jurus, that they should try to make it possible that the general public is not affected, and the rule should be made, and it's actually a standard that whatever sort of speech which actually insults the leaders of other sects or other religions, it should be stopped. And if you see any professional talking against the other sect, just stop him over there straight away. It's the duty of the normal mu'mineen as well. So viewers, that's all from this week, and hopefully we have provided you some information regarding the events which have occurred during the week. And your feedback will be really welcome, and you can see on the screen the email ID of Basit TV. Send us your feedback and comments about our program, and we'll be seeing you next week with the new episode of our program. And goodbye till then. See ya.